You are not disturbed by life, but by the judgments you keep repeating inside your own mind. This is where your power begins, and where it is either lost or recovered. Every day you watch thoughts rise without choosing them, reactions form without questioning them, and emotions take command before reason has time to speak. Yet none of these movements are final unless you allow them to be. What belongs to you is simple: your judgment, your choice, your response, and your willingness to live according to virtue even when pressure builds around you. Everything else moves outside your control, no matter how strongly you prefer otherwise. The mind becomes steady only when it stops demanding control over what was never assigned to it. If you are ready to examine your mind without excuse and take responsibility for how you think, speak, and act, stay here. Subscribe and continue this practice with us, not as entertainment, but as daily training in self-governance. What follows is not comfort, it is clarity. Number 1. Rule your mind. Rule your life. You do not lose your life in one great collapse. You lose it in small surrenders. A thought appears and you accept it. A feeling rises and you obey it. A fear enters and you call it truth. An insult lands and you let another man's words govern your day. This is how a mind is handed away piece by piece. Not in chains, not in chains of iron, in chains of habit, weakness, and careless consent. You say you want peace, but you keep giving authority to everything outside yourself. You let the news shake you, the opinions of others disturb you, the memory of old injuries poison you, the hope of future comfort weaken you, and the pressure of present discomfort make you abandon your own judgment. Then you wonder why you feel divided. There is no mystery in it. The mind becomes what it repeatedly allows to rule it. Understand this first, and understand it without softness. What destroys most men is not what happens to them, but what they decide about what happens to them. Events strike the body, but judgment strikes the soul. The body may be pushed, tired, hungry, insulted, delayed, or denied, but none of these things can make you corrupted unless you first hand over your power. The ruling faculty in you, the part that judges, chooses, resists, and consents, remains free unless you surrender it. That is the whole struggle, not to escape life, not to demand that life become easy, only to keep the inner governor unbroken. The mind is not strong because it never feels pressure. The mind is strong because it knows what belongs to it and what does not. It knows that the body may be sick, but the judgment need not be sick. It knows that reputation may be attacked, but virtue need not be attacked. It knows that loss may arrive, but character need not be lost. It knows that another man may lie, yet truth remains available. It knows that events are often harsh, but it is still possible to meet them with dignity. This is where power begins, not in controlling the world, but in controlling your response to the world. You must stop asking life to spare you and start asking yourself to govern yourself. That is the work. That is the burden and the freedom together. You will not become calm by waiting for calm circumstances. You will become calm by learning not to kneel before disturbance. Every day gives you a chance to prove whether your mind belongs to reason or to impulse. Every annoyance, every delay, every temptation, every slight, every fear, every pleasure is a test, not of your luck, of your discipline. When you wake in the morning, before you reach for anything else, before you let the day flood your senses, take a moment to remind yourself what kind of being you are. You are not a creature made to be dragged by every feeling. You are not an echo of other people's opinions. You are not the servant of comfort. You are a rational being capable of choosing what is fit, what is just, what is restrained, and what is noble. Begin the day by setting the mind in its proper place. Tell yourself plainly, today I may meet interruption, ingratitude, arrogance, dishonesty, fatigue, and pain. None of these things are new. None of these things are beyond my strength. What matters is whether I remain faithful to reason. That is why the first discipline is the division between what is up to you and what is not. This division is not a theory. It is the foundation of freedom. Your opinions are up to you. Your choices are up to you. Your judgments are up to you. Your impulses can be examined by you. Your aims can be purified by you. But your body is not wholly up to you. Other people are not up to you. Reputation is not up to you. Outcomes are not fully up to you. The past is not up to you. Tomorrow is not up to you. If you confuse these things, you will become anxious, resentful, and weak. If you separate them correctly, you will become steadier than those around you. The man who knows the boundary of his power is never thrown into despair by the events he cannot command. Look at how most people live. They spend their days trying to control what was never theirs to control. They want admiration, and they cannot guarantee it. They want success, and they cannot guarantee it. They want loyalty, and they cannot guarantee it. They want to be spared embarrassment, and they cannot guarantee it. Then when these things fail them, they collapse as if nature had betrayed a promise. But no promise was ever made. Only fools promise themselves that life will obey their preferences. The wise man asks something harder of himself. Not that life become obedient, but that his mind become obedient to reason. A mind ruled by impressions is a slave. It sees a thing and believes it. It hears a complaint and joins it. It feels an urge and obeys it. It imagines disaster and panics before disaster arrives. It imagines offense and becomes angry before offense is even clear. It imagines loss and starts grieving a future that may never come. Such a mind is not living. It is being dragged. You must refuse this slavery. The first step is to pause, not after the reaction, before it, between the impression and the assent. In that small space lives your freedom. A man says something harsh to you. Your face tightens, your blood rises, your mouth prepares an answer. Stop. Not because anger is noble, it is not. Not because silence is weak, it is not. Stop because you have not yet examined whether the impression deserves your agreement. Ask, what has actually happened? A sound was made, words were spoken. Meaning is not yet settled. Perhaps the man was cruel, perhaps he was mistaken. Perhaps you are tired and hypersensitive. Perhaps both are true. Do not let the first sting become your judge. Examine it. Reduce it to facts. Then decide what response is fitting. That pause is not delay, it is mastery. This same discipline must be used with fear. Fear is a liar dressed in urgency. It tells you that because something may happen, it is already happening. It tells you that because something is unpleasant, it is unbearable. It tells you that because you could fail, you will fail. It tells you that because others may judge you, your worth is already diminished. Do not submit to it. Fear does not govern facts. It governs imagination. And imagination, though powerful, is not sovereign. Reason must take the throne. When you are afraid, ask what the fear is actually about. Is it about pain? Pain is a bodily event, not a moral failure. Is it about embarrassment? Embarrassment is a social event, not a wound to your character. Is it about loss? Loss is part of the order of life. Is it about death? Then remember that death is not a punishment but a limit, and all that is born is subject to limits. Fear shrinks when examined. Much of what terrifies us is already half dissolved under honest scrutiny. Do not imagine that Stoic strength means never feeling the pull of fear, anger, sadness, desire, or fatigue. It means not granting these things authority simply because they arrive. The first movement belongs to nature. The second belongs to you. Nature may strike the nerve. You decide whether to bow. Nature may bring the storm. You decide whether to be swept away. The untrained man says, "I could not help it," The disciplined man says, "I could have helped it, and I will help it next time." That is a hard sentence. It is also the beginning of dignity. You must learn to distrust your first judgment, especially when it flatters your weakness. A man is offended, and his mind tells him he has been wronged beyond measure. A man is tempted, and his mind tells him indulgence is harmless. A man is discouraged, and his mind tells him he is finished. A man is tired, and his mind tells him discipline can wait. These are not truths. They are excuses wearing the mask of necessity. The mind is skilled at defending its own laziness. It invents reasons for what it wants. Your task is to expose those reasons before they become habits. One of the most valuable exercises you can practice is the morning anticipation of difficulty. Before the day begins, do not tell yourself the day will be easy. Tell yourself the opposite. Tell yourself you will likely encounter people who are vain, selfish, careless, impatient, dishonest, fearful, and rude. Tell yourself that some of those faults may appear in you as well. Then do not be surprised when they appear. A man who expects smooth roads is shattered by a stone. A man who expects rough roads walks carefully. He does not panic when the ground resists him. He was already prepared. This is not pessimism, it is training. Another exercise is the evening examination. When the day ends, do not let it disappear into unconsciousness. Sit with it. Review your actions without drama and without excuse. Ask, where did I act with reason? Where did I betray it? Where did I speak too quickly? Where did I waste energy on what was not mine? Where did I indulge fear? Where did I chase approval? Where did I allow appetite to rule? Where did I remain steady? Where did I choose restraint over impulse? This review is not to humiliate yourself. It is to teach the soul to see itself clearly. A life not examined is a life led by drift. Be merciless in honesty and merciful in correction. If you see that you were petty, say so. If you see that you were weak, say so. If you see that you avoided a duty, say so. But do not stop at confession. The purpose is not guilt. The purpose is improvement. Tomorrow, meet the same temptation with better preparation. This is how character is built, not by vague intentions but by repeated correction. A man becomes just by practicing justice, self-controlled by practicing restraint, courageous by facing what he fears, and wise by refusing to be deceived. You must also train your attention. Most minds are scattered, not because life is complicated, but because the person is undisciplined. He gives his attention to whatever glitters. He is pulled by a message, a noise, a memory, a craving, a fantasy. His inner life is never in one place long enough to become strong. Attention is not a luxury, it is the tool of freedom. What you attend to shapes what you become. If you feed your mind with noise, you become noisy. If you feed it with complaint, you become resentful. If you feed it with vanity, you become fragile. If you feed it with reason, you become steady. So practice returning. Return when the mind wanders. Return when it runs ahead into fear. Return when it falls back into regret. Return when it spirals into fantasy. Return when it reaches for applause. Return when it sulks. Return when it compares. Return when it indulges in self-pity. Each return is a victory, not a grand victory, but a real one. The soul is not made strong in one moment. It is made strong through repeated refusals to remain lost. The world will offer you many opportunities to become less than yourself. It will invite you to lie in order to be liked. It will invite you to compromise in order to advance. It will invite you to react in order to feel powerful. It will invite you to overeat, overconsume, overtalk, overexplain, overreact, and overindulge, all while calling it normal. But normal is not the measure of a good life. Virtue is the measure. Ask in every situation, not what is common, not what is popular, not what is easy, but what is right. If a thing is contrary to reason, it is harmful even when praised. If a thing is in agreement with reason, it is good even when overlooked. This is why you must begin to treat virtue as the only true good. Everything else is secondary. Wealth can be used well or badly. Health can be used well or badly. Reputation can be used well or badly. Power can be used well or badly. Even comfort can be used well or badly. But virtue cannot be used badly, because virtue is itself the correct use of the self. To live well is to live according to reason, justice, courage, and self-restraint. If you possess these, you possess what matters. If you lack these, everything else is unstable decoration. Once this becomes clear, you stop begging life for gifts and start demanding more of yourself. You no longer ask, how can I get the thing, but how can I remain noble while seeking it? You no longer ask, how can I avoid discomfort, but how can I endure it without becoming lesser? You no longer ask, how can I win, but how can I act justly, whatever the outcome? This shift is everything. It moves the center of gravity from external gain to inner excellence. The person who makes success his master lives in panic. The person who makes virtue his master lives in command. You will be tested most where your weakness is already known to you. The impatient man will be tested by delay. The prideful man will be tested by humiliation. The greedy man will be tested by scarcity. The fearful man will be tested by uncertainty. The angry man will be tested by disrespect. The lazy man will be tested by duty. The attached man will be tested by loss. This is not cruelty, it is instruction. Life reveals your defects so that you may address them. Every recurring struggle is a message. The question is whether you are humble enough to read it. When the test comes, do not say, "Why is this happening to me?" That is the cry of a person who still believes the universe owes him comfort. Instead say, "Here is the material for virtue. This delay is the material for patience. This insult is the material for self-command. This disappointment is the material for equanimity. This temptation is the material for restraint. This fear is the material for courage." Nothing in the world is wasted if the soul knows how to use it. The obstacle becomes training when the mind is disciplined enough to handle it. There is no shame in feeling the first movement of passion. There is shame in failing to govern it. Anger rises. Fine. Do not feed it. Desire appears. Fine. Do not obey it blindly. Sadness comes. Fine. Do not let it turn into self-pity. Fear starts to speak. Fine. Do not let it become policy. The mind is not guilty for being struck. It becomes guilty when it consents to what is unfit. You are responsible for your assent. This responsibility is not a punishment. It is your dignity. Only a being capable of choice can be noble. Learn to ask better questions, not "How do I get others to behave as I wish?" but "How do I behave as I ought, regardless of how others behave?" Not "How do I protect my image?" but "How do I protect my character?" Not "How do I avoid difficulty?" but "How do I meet difficulty with reason?" Not "How do I silence every disturbing thought?" but "Which thoughts deserve assent?" These questions sharpen the soul. They bring your attention back to the only territory you can truly govern, the quality of your own choices. In your work, do the work. Do not spend half your energy resenting what the work costs you. A duty done grudgingly is still duty, but a duty done with resistance weakens the spirit. Bring your full attention to the task before you. Not because the task defines your value, but because the way you handle it reveals your character. If the task is tedious, endure it without complaint. If it is difficult, meet it without theatrics. If it is unfair, Answer injustice with your own justice. If it is overlooked, do not poison yourself with the hunger for praise. The good man seeks to act well, not to be admired for acting well. In your relationships, remember that other people are not extensions of your will. They are independent beings with their own judgments, weaknesses, and errors. You cannot command them into wisdom. You can only govern your own conduct. Do not make your peace dependent on their mood. Do not make your self-respect dependent on their approval. Do not make your virtue conditional on their treatment of you. Love what is fitting in them, but do not become enslaved by their opinion. Be just, patient, truthful, and restrained. If they respond badly, that is their business. Your business is to remain aligned with reason. This does not mean you become cold. It means you become clean. Clean in your motives, clean in your speech, clean in your reactions, clean in your boundaries, clean in your judgment. You may care for others without becoming weak before them. You may listen without surrendering your mind. You may forgive without excusing folly. You may help without becoming desperate for gratitude. You may separate without hatred. You may remain with dignity even when others do not understand you. That is strength, not hardness for its own sake, but steadiness in service of what is right. Voluntary discomfort is another discipline that many avoid because it exposes how dependent they have become on ease. Choose, from time to time, a simpler meal. Walk without complaint when you could ride. Stand in cool air. Leave behind what is unnecessary. Practice saying no to a convenience so that your mind learns it does not require softness to function. The purpose is not self-punishment. The purpose is freedom. A person accustomed to luxury becomes frightened by inconvenience. A person trained to endure understands that comfort is not a ruler. He can use it or leave it. In moments of temptation, do not debate with weakness for too long. Weakness is persuasive when given space. Cut it down early. Say, this pleasure is not necessary. This impulse is not a command. This craving does not define me. This momentary urge is not worth tomorrow's shame. The man who can tell himself the truth in the moment of temptation becomes harder to conquer with each repetition. The soul is forged by the refusals nobody sees. You must also learn to accept what cannot be changed, not as surrender to despair, but as alignment with reality. There is a vast difference between passive resignation and rational acceptance. Passive resignation says, nothing can be done, so I will collapse. Rational acceptance says, this is the fact before me, so I will not waste strength fighting the fact itself. When the past is fixed, do not wrestle with it. When the body has a limit, do not curse the limit. When another person is foolish, do not demand that they be wise for your convenience. When events unfold outside your control, meet them with character. There is no nobility in denying reality. There is only waste. Some men suffer twice. First from the event, then from their refusal to accept the event. They cannot bear what happened, and they cannot bear that it happened. They trap themselves in a second prison made of complaint. Do not do this. Grieve what is natural to grieve, but do not become attached to bitterness. A loss is a loss. Let it be that and no more. Do not adorn it with fantasies of injustice that only feed your wound. The wound may exist, but your story about the wound can either poison you or heal you. Choose the story that helps you live rightly. The examined life requires you to see your own hypocrisy. You say you value truth, but you flatter yourself. You say you value discipline, but you negotiate with every discomfort. You say you value peace, but you feed on drama. You say you value wisdom, but you let impulse make decisions. Admit this cleanly. There is no benefit in pretending to be better than you are. The pride of false progress is a trap. Better to be a beginner who knows he is a beginner than a fool who imagines himself already wise. At the same time, do not insult your own capacity. You are not helpless. You are not condemned to remain exactly as you are. Every day gives you a fresh opening to choose better. A bad habit is only powerful when repeated without question. A weak tendency is only stable when defended. Remove the defense and the habit begins to lose its hold. One honest refusal at a time, one pause at a time, one correction at a time, one returned attention at a time. This is how freedom grows. When you fail, and you will fail, do not turn failure into identity. The mistake is an event. It is not your essence. The untrained man says, "I blew it, so I am hopeless." The disciplined man says, "I yielded there, and I must now strengthen that place." There is a difference between confession and collapse. Use failure as a teacher. It shows exactly where the soul is weak. That knowledge is useful only if you are brave enough to face it without turning away. You need a firm relationship with solitude. Sit with yourself without distraction. Many men are unbearable to themselves because they have never learned to be in their own company honestly. They need noise to escape the condition of their soul. But if you can sit quietly and observe your thoughts, your fears, your desires, and your judgments without panic, you will discover that much of what seemed overpowering loses its force when watched closely. Solitude reveals whether your mind is ruled by reason or by craving. Do not fear this revelation. It is how you become whole. And when external praise comes, receive it without intoxication. When blame comes, receive it without collapse. Both are outside your control. Both are uncertain. Both can mislead you. Let neither determine your self-worth. The wise person does not become inflated when applauded, nor diminished when criticized. He measures himself by the quality of his own action, not by the noise around it. This is one of the cleanest forms of freedom, to be unmoved by applause and unbroken by insult. Do not spend your days waiting to feel ready. Readiness is often a disguise for delay. The soul becomes capable through action, not before it. Begin where you are. Speak truthfully today. Endure one annoyance without complaint today. Refuse one unnecessary indulgence today. Examine one judgment today. Return to reason today. The future is built from what you are willing to do while unready. There is no other path. You may ask, how do I keep doing this when I am tired? By remembering that tiredness is not always a command. It is often only a sensation. Not every sensation deserves obedience. You may ask, how do I keep going when I feel discouraged? By remembering that discouragement is a condition of the present mind, not a verdict on your life. You may ask, how do I remain steady when others keep provoking me? By remembering that their behavior is theirs, but your response is yours. These are not slogans, they are tools. Use them. The mind becomes powerful when it stops pleading with life and starts instructing itself, not with cruelty, but with authority. Say to yourself, do not be dragged. Do not exaggerate. Do not surrender to the first impression. Do not trade long-term character for short-term relief. Do not make the world responsible for your inner condition. Do not waste the present by resenting what is outside your power. Be precise, be just, be restrained, be courageous, be truthful. These are not optional virtues. They are the shape of a sound life. If you live this way, people may still misunderstand you. They may still disrespect you. You may still lose things. You may still be delayed, tested, and disappointed. But you will no longer be easily conquered. The world can touch your circumstances, but it cannot easily touch your ruling self unless you invite it to do so. And once you know that, once you have tasted even a little of that inward authority, you will see how foolish it is to hand your mind over to fear, to vanity, to appetite, or to the opinions of those who do not even govern their own souls. So begin now, not tomorrow, not when the conditions improve, not when your mood becomes favorable. Now, take the next thought and examine it. Take the next impulse and do not obey it blindly. Take the next irritation and refuse to magnify it. Take the next task and do it with attention. Take the next disappointment and meet it without complaint. Take the next opportunity to speak and make your words exact. Take the next moment and live as if your character depended on it, because it does. You have power over your mind when you stop pretending otherwise. You have power over your mind when you stop calling every feeling a command. You have power over your mind when you stop making excuses for your reactions. You have power over your mind when you choose reason over impulse, duty over comfort, truth over appearance, and virtue over everything that merely flatters the body for a moment. This power is not given by fortune, it is taken by discipline. It is defended by repetition. It is proved in private before it is visible in public. And when you sleep tonight, ask yourself one final question with complete honesty. Did I govern myself today, or was I governed by what happened to me? Do not answer quickly. Answer truthfully. Then carry that answer into tomorrow and do better. That is how a man becomes strong. That is how the mind becomes free. That is how life is ruled from within. Number 2. Master thoughts. Defeat inner chaos. There is a battlefield you enter every morning before you speak a single word, before you answer a message, before you face another person, before the world has any opportunity to test you. That battlefield is your own thinking. Most people imagine their greatest struggles exist outside themselves. Yet the deepest conflict begins long before any event unfolds. It begins the moment an unchecked thought presents itself and is accepted without examination. From that moment, the mind no longer leads, it follows. Look carefully at your own life. How many decisions have truly been yours? How many have been made by fear before reason had the chance to speak? How many conversations were controlled by wounded pride? How many opportunities were abandoned because imagination painted failure as certainty? How many peaceful moments were poisoned by expectations about what tomorrow might bring? You may believe circumstances have shaped your days, but far more often your judgments have done the shaping. The undisciplined mind never remains still. It races toward imagined disasters, rehearses arguments that never occur, reopens injuries that time itself has already closed, and invents offenses where none were intended. It exhausts itself chasing what cannot be possessed while neglecting the only possession that truly belongs to it, the ability to judge rightly. Inner chaos is rarely created by the world. It is created when the mind loses the habit of examining itself. Do not believe every thought because it appears inside your own head. A thought is only an arrival. It is not yet a truth. Many people live as though every passing idea deserves immediate trust. A fearful thought appears, and they become frightened. An angry thought appears, and they become hostile. A doubtful thought appears, and they abandon their purpose. They never stop to ask whether the thought deserves agreement. They mistake appearance for reality, and that mistake quietly governs their entire lives. This is why the first work of self-governance begins with attention. Become aware of what enters your mind before you become concerned with changing the world around you. Watch your thinking as carefully as a wise guardian watches those approaching a city gate. Not every visitor should be welcomed. Some thoughts arrive disguised as wisdom while secretly serving fear. Others pretend to offer protection while quietly weakening courage. The disciplined mind does not open its gates without inspection. When a troubling thought appears, refuse to give it immediate authority. Ask yourself simple questions. Is this fact or assumption? Does this concern something within my power or something beyond it? Is this judgment leading me toward virtue or toward agitation? These questions may seem ordinary, yet they separate a governed mind from a scattered one. The person who asks them consistently begins to loosen the grip of confusion. Many people spend years attempting to organize their external lives while allowing complete disorder within. They create schedules yet neglect their character. They manage finances yet fail to manage resentment. They improve their appearance while leaving envy untouched. They seek recognition while ignoring the habits that rob them of self-respect. Order on the outside cannot compensate for disorder within. A well-arranged life without a disciplined mind remains unstable because its foundation has never been strengthened. Notice how quickly the mind creates stories. A delayed reply becomes rejection. A criticism becomes proof of failure. One mistake becomes evidence that improvement is impossible. None of these conclusions are required by reality. They are additions supplied by careless judgment. Reality presents events. The restless mind decorates them with unnecessary suffering. Remove the decoration, and many burdens disappear before they ever become heavy. There is freedom in describing events exactly as they are. Instead of saying, everything is falling apart, say, one difficulty has appeared. Instead of saying, this always happens to me, say, this happened today. Instead of saying, I cannot endure this, say, this demands patience. Precise language trains precise judgment. Exaggeration feeds emotional disorder, while accuracy strengthens the ruling part of the soul. Every morning, before allowing the concerns of the day to enter, establish your direction. Do not begin by asking what the world will give you. Ask what kind of person you intend to be, regardless of what the day contains. Resolve to protect honesty when dishonesty appears profitable. Resolve to preserve patience when others become impatient. Resolve to remain just when treated unfairly. These decisions prepare the mind before circumstances attempt to shape it. The morning is not merely the beginning of another schedule. It is the beginning of another opportunity to govern yourself. If you rise already carried away by news, distractions, comparisons, and endless demands, your mind begins the day as a servant instead of a ruler. Give your first attention to your own reason. Remind yourself that no event possesses the authority to determine your character unless you surrender that authority willingly. Throughout the day, practice interrupting automatic judgment. Whenever emotion rises sharply, delay your conclusion. You do not need to suppress feeling. You need to prevent feeling from becoming your judge. A strong emotion often speaks with great confidence while possessing very little wisdom. Let reason arrive before action follows. A few quiet moments of examination can prevent hours of regret. You will discover that many disturbances lose their force simply because they were never examined before. A harsh remark from another person may initially sting, but once you ask whether your character has actually been harmed, the injury begins to shrink. Another person's opinion may influence reputation, but it cannot stain virtue unless you cooperate with it. Understanding this distinction protects inner stability more effectively than endless arguments ever could. Be especially cautious of habitual complaint. Complaint disguises itself as honesty while slowly teaching the mind that helplessness is normal. Every repeated complaint strengthens attention toward what cannot be controlled and weakens attention toward what can. This habit steals energy from improvement and redirects it toward resentment. Whenever you catch yourself complaining, ask immediately what action still remains available to you. If action exists, perform it. If no action exists, practice acceptance. Between these two paths, complaint has no useful place. Acceptance does not mean approving every circumstance. It means refusing to waste strength arguing with reality after reality has already arrived. A disciplined mind spends little time wishing events had unfolded differently. Its concern is always directed toward responding with justice, courage, moderation, and wisdom in the present moment. Every minute spent resisting what already exists is a minute unavailable for living well. Guard yourself against the illusion that comfort produces peace. Comfort often produces dependence. The more your happiness depends upon favorable conditions, the more fragile your tranquility becomes. Train yourself to remain composed even when plans change, when praise disappears, when success comes slowly, or when inconvenience interrupts your expectations. Each small disappointment becomes valuable practice for larger trials that life may eventually present. Another essential exercise is to observe the conversations taking place inside your own mind. Most people would never speak to another person with the same exaggeration, hopelessness, or bitterness they direct toward themselves. They quietly repeat destructive judgments until those judgments begin to resemble identity. Interrupt this habit. Speak inwardly with honesty rather than cruelty. Correct yourself firmly without condemning yourself. A mistake deserves improvement, not despair. At the close of each day, become your own examiner. Review your conduct without seeking excuses. Ask where your thinking remained clear and where confusion gained influence. Ask where unnecessary emotion replaced careful judgment. Ask where vanity, fear, impatience, or desire quietly directed your actions. This examination is not meant to produce guilt. Its purpose is refinement. Every honest observation becomes material for tomorrow's improvement. Do not measure progress by the absence of difficult thoughts. Measure it by the speed with which reason regains command. Even the disciplined mind encounters temptation, irritation, uncertainty, and sorrow. The difference lies in response. Disorder remains only when these visitors are invited to stay. Wisdom greets them, understands them, and then sends them away without surrendering authority. You will notice something remarkable as this practice deepens. External events begin to lose much of their power over your inner condition. Delays remain delays, but they no longer become outrage. Criticism remains criticism, but it no longer becomes self-destruction. Uncertainty remains uncertainty, but it no longer becomes panic. The world itself has not changed. Your relationship with it has changed because your thinking has become disciplined. Many people search endlessly for techniques that promise immediate peace while avoiding the harder work of correcting judgment. Lasting tranquility cannot be purchased through comfort or distraction. It is earned by repeatedly choosing reason over impulse until that choice becomes your natural habit. Every examined thought strengthens the foundation of character. Every rejected false judgment weakens the influence of inner chaos. Remember that your greatest responsibility is not controlling every event that enters your life. It is governing the faculty that interprets those events. One person encounters difficulty and becomes bitter. Another encounters the same difficulty and becomes wiser. The event did not determine the outcome. The judgment did. This truth places responsibility exactly where it belongs and removes every excuse for surrendering your inner freedom. When you find yourself overwhelmed, reduce your attention to the present duty alone. Do not carry tomorrow before it arrives. Do not reopen yesterday after it has departed. Ask only what virtue requires of you now. Speak truthfully now. Act justly now. Endure patiently now. Think carefully now. Life is always lived in the present moment, and reason is always available there. As your thinking becomes more disciplined, you will gradually discover a quieter strength that does not depend upon applause, comfort, certainty, or favorable fortune. It comes from knowing that your mind no longer rushes wherever impulse commands. It comes from recognizing that every judgment now passes through the examination of reason before receiving your consent. This is genuine freedom, not freedom from difficulty, but freedom from becoming its servant. There will still be days when confusion attempts to return. Old habits seldom disappear without resistance. Do not become discouraged when the mind wanders. Bring it back each time with patience and firmness. The repeated return to reason is itself the training. Victory is not found in never drifting. Victory is found in refusing to remain lost. Guard your thoughts because they quietly become your judgments. Guard your judgments because they gradually become your actions. Guard your actions because they steadily become your character. And guard your character because it becomes the life you ultimately live. The mind you cultivate today becomes the destiny you inhabit tomorrow. Leave this moment with a single resolution that requires no witness and seeks no applause. Refuse to allow another unexamined thought to rule your conduct. From this day forward, let every judgment stand before reason, before it stands before action. In that quiet discipline, inner chaos begins to fade, and a mind governed by wisdom slowly takes its rightful place. Number 3. Control reactions. Preserve inner peace. You do not lose peace because the world becomes difficult. You lose peace because you answer difficulty too quickly. Something happens, and before the mind has even examined it, the body has already prepared its drama. The jaw tightens, the chest hardens, the voice rises, the thoughts begin to accuse, and then you call this reaction natural. It is not natural in the noble sense, it is trained. It has been repeated so often that it feels like identity. But a habit is not a law, a reaction is not a command, and what has been repeated can be unlearned by the same power that once formed it. There is a moment before every reaction in which you still belong to yourself. It is small, almost invisible, and that is why so many people pass through it without noticing. Yet that moment contains your freedom. Between the event and the answer lies a space where judgment can either rush blindly forward or stand still and inspect the facts. Most suffering is not born in the event itself. It is born when the event is interpreted by a mind that has not learned restraint. A man speaks sharply, a plan collapses, a promise is broken, a delay appears, a disappointment arrives. These things happen every day to every human being. The difference is not in the event. The difference is in whether you permit the event to govern your inner state. You must begin by becoming suspicious of the speed of your own reactions. Quickness is not wisdom. The ungoverned mind is fast to insult, fast to panic, fast to defend itself, fast to imagine injury, fast to demand satisfaction. This speed gives the illusion of strength while actually revealing weakness. The person who cannot wait before reacting is not powerful. He is exposed. He has given the first movement of the soul away before reason has had the chance to speak. And when reason is absent, appetite fills the throne. Do not think that controlling reaction means becoming numb. Numbness is only avoidance wearing a mask. The Stoic task is not to become dead to feeling, but to refuse being ruled by it. A person may feel anger stir and still choose fairness. A person may feel fear rise and still choose courage. A person may feel disappointment and still choose composure. This is not denial, it is rule. The inner ruler is not destroyed by the presence of feeling. It is destroyed when feeling is allowed to issue orders. Look at how many people spend their days apologizing to their own impulses. They say harsh words and later explain them. They overreact and later justify themselves. They complain and then defend the complaint as honesty. They act on a mood and then call the result unavoidable. But the soul is not improved by excuses. Every excuse trains future weakness. Every justification teaches the mind that it need not do better. If you wish to preserve peace, stop defending reactions that should have been examined and restrained. The first discipline is to halt the immediate stampede of judgment. When something strikes you, do not rush to decide what it means. Ask first whether the thing itself is actually harmful or whether your interpretation has made it harmful. A broken schedule is not tragedy. A rude expression is not corruption of the soul. A lost opportunity is not the collapse of the universe. A person's lack of understanding is not a sentence against your worth. What wounds the mind most deeply is not the fact before it, but the story it tells about the fact. And stories can be corrected. This is why self-examination must become a daily practice, not a rare event reserved for moments of crisis. In the morning, before the world gets its hands on your attention, prepare yourself for the day's assaults. Do not hope for softness. Prepare for friction. You will meet impatience. You will meet vanity. You will meet misunderstanding. You may meet disrespect. You may meet delays. You may meet demands that try to bend your character. If you expect the day to be free of resistance, you will be surprised into disorder. If you expect resistance, you will be less likely to surrender your peace when it comes. Then decide in advance how you will answer, not with elaborate promises, with principles. I will not let another person's tone decide my own. I will not let inconvenience make me dishonest. I will not let a setback turn me bitter. I will not let praise intoxicate me. I will not let criticism make me unstable. I will not let appetite or irritation steer my conduct. These are not slogans, they are commitments to govern reaction before reaction arrives. When the day begins to test you, use the pause, not the pause after the outburst, when damage has already been done, but the pause before assent. The pause is where reason steps in and asks whether the impression deserves agreement. You may feel the first flash of offense, but you do not have to multiply it. You may feel the first surge of anger, but you do not have to nourish it with imagination. You may feel the first tremor of fear, but you do not have to build a philosophy out of it. Thoughts become dangerous when they are obeyed too quickly. Many people confuse emotional intensity with truth. They think that because something feels urgent, it must be important. This is a serious error. What is urgent is not always what matters. What feels unbearable is not always unbearable. What feels humiliating is not always dishonoring. What feels threatening is not always harmful. The body can react long before the mind understands. The task of discipline is to ensure that reaction does not become verdict. You preserve peace by narrowing your attention to what is yours. Your judgment is yours. Your choice is yours. Your speech is yours. Your conduct is yours. Your response is yours. The weather is not yours. The behavior of other people is not yours. The outcome of every task is not yours. The past is not yours. Reputation is not yours to command. When you give your heart to what is not yours, you create unnecessary turbulence. When you bring it back to what is yours, peace begins to take shape. A great deal of inner unrest comes from living as though the world owes you consistency. But the world owes you nothing except the chance to practice virtue. Events will remain mixed. People will remain imperfect. Bodies will tire. Plans will fail. Words will be misunderstood. Fortune will alternate. If you demand otherwise, you hand your peace over to conditions that were never stable. If you accept the instability of external things and focus on the stability of your own character, then life becomes a field for training rather than a source of constant offense. Learn to interpret interruption as practice. A delay tests patience. A contradiction tests humility. A loss tests detachment. An insult tests self-command. A temptation tests self-restraint. A failure tests honesty. Nothing is wasted if you know how to use it. The undisciplined person sees only annoyance. The trained person sees instruction. This change in perspective is not a trick. It is the core of inner peace. What disturbs the weak becomes fuel for the strong. You must also examine the habit of complaint. Complaint feels useful because it gives the mind temporary relief, but that relief is poison. Every complaint deepens resentment toward reality itself. It trains the soul to believe that peace depends on conditions becoming easier. It does not. Peace depends on the quality of the mind confronting the conditions. Complaint does not improve a hardship, it multiplies it. So when complaint rises, ask what duty remains, then do that duty without ceremony. Sometimes the most powerful reaction is no reaction at all. Not because you are hiding, but because you are refusing to become reactive prey. A man provokes you, hoping to pull your soul out of order. If you answer from anger, he has already succeeded in part. If you answer from calm judgment, he has failed to capture what matters. Silence, when chosen wisely, can be a sign of strength. Speech, when measured, can be a sign of mastery. Neither is useful if it comes from fear or vanity. The question is always whether the answer came from reason. There is a practical exercise for this. When you notice irritation rising, name the thing exactly. Not, I am being destroyed. Not, this is unbearable. Not, everything is ruined. Say instead, I am irritated. That is all. Then ask what exactly happened. Strip away the theatrical language. Keep only the facts. A fact is small enough to handle. A fantasy of catastrophe is not. Once the situation is reduced to truth, the mind becomes less dramatic and more capable of a sound response. Another exercise is to inspect your first impulse and delay your second. The first movement of feeling arrives without consent. The second movement, where you keep feeding it, is where your responsibility begins. This is where peace is either protected or surrendered. If you learn to stop at the second movement and question it, many storms will die before they spread. The mind does not need to be perfect, it needs to be vigilant. The evening review is equally important. Before sleep, ask yourself where you reacted badly and why. Ask where you could have paused and did not. Ask where you made someone else responsible for your inner state. Ask where you chose speed over wisdom. Ask where you let disappointment harden into complaint. Ask where you remained steady. Ask where you answered with patience. Ask where you preserved dignity. This is not a ritual of shame. It is a discipline of truth. The unexamined reaction becomes the repeated reaction. The examined reaction becomes opportunity. Do not be soft on the self-deceptions that protect bad habits. A person says, "That is just how I am." No, that is how you have been acting. A person says, "I could not help it." Perhaps you could not stop the first surge, but you could have stopped the full reaction. A person says, "They made me do it." No one controls your assent but you. The moment you say these things and believe them, you resign your freedom. Refuse the resignation. Hold yourself accountable with firmness and calm. There is also the matter of other people's moods. Many lose their peace because they think they must absorb every atmosphere around them. They enter a room and immediately borrow the anger of others. They hear anxiety and begin to imitate it. They encounter impatience and become impatient themselves. But why should your inner condition be rented out so cheaply? The state of another's soul is not a command for yours. You may respond with justice. You need not contract their disorder. The same is true in relationships. If another person is careless, do not let their carelessness make you careless. If another person is cruel, do not let their cruelty train cruelty in you. If another person is unreliable, do not let that become your excuse for abandoning your own standards. Peace is not preserved by controlling the conduct of others. It is preserved by refusing to let their conduct become the master of your own reason. You should practice small acts of restraint so that larger moments do not overwhelm you. Let yourself be interrupted without resentment. Let yourself be corrected without defensiveness. Let yourself be delayed without agitation. Let yourself be ignored without self-pity. Let yourself be misunderstood without immediate revenge in speech. These small occasions are not trivial. They are the training ground of the soul. A man who cannot remain composed in small matters will not remain composed in large ones. And when the pressure is real, when the circumstance is genuinely hard, remember that hardship alone does not violate peace. What violates peace is the thought that hardship should not exist. That thought is a rebellion against the structure of life. Better to say, "This is difficult, and I will meet it with all the steadiness I possess. This is painful, and I will not make it worse with panic. This is inconvenient, and I will not turn inconvenience into moral collapse. This is outside my control, and I will control what remains." The daily return to reason is what gives a human life its shape. Not once, but repeatedly. Not after everything is calm, but while things are moving. Return after irritation. Return after disappointment. Return after temptation. Return after mental wandering. Return after self-pity. Return after the urge to blame. Each return is a recovery of peace. Each return is a refusal to let the lower part of the self sit on the throne. You may have spent years reacting automatically, and because of that you may think peace is far away. It is not. It is closer than your next thought. It begins the moment you refuse to answer blindly. It begins the moment you acknowledge that not every impression is a truth, and not every feeling is a guide. It begins the moment you place the mind under discipline rather than under impulse. There is nothing noble in being ruled by every passing agitation. There is dignity in refusing to be dragged. There is dignity in standing still inside while the world moves and presses and tests. There is dignity in choosing the measured response over the immediate outburst. There is dignity in protecting your own character with the same seriousness others use to protect their possessions. Your inner peace is not built by chance. It is built by these decisions, one after another, until restraint becomes your nature. So before the day ends, do not ask only what happened to you. Ask how you answered. Ask whether your peace was protected or surrendered. Ask whether you acted as the servant of impressions or the guardian of reason. Then, take responsibility for the answer and begin again tomorrow with clearer eyes. This is the work, not to control everything, not to feel nothing, not to avoid all pain, but to ensure that no external thing commands the inner ruler unless you freely allow it. Stand on that ground. Keep that boundary. Let the world strike the surface while reason holds the center. That is how reactions are controlled. That is how peace is preserved. That is how a human being becomes free without ever escaping the world. Number 4. Ignore opinions, protect mental freedom. You surrender your freedom long before anyone places chains upon you. The surrender begins the moment you decide that another person's opinion deserves greater authority than your own reason. From that instant, your peace no longer belongs to you. It belongs to whoever praises you, criticizes you, misunderstands you, or refuses to approve of you. Many people spend their entire lives believing they are searching for acceptance, when in truth they are slowly abandoning themselves. Ask yourself a difficult question. How many choices have you made because they were right, and how many because you feared being judged? How many words remained unspoken because you imagined another person's disapproval? How many actions were delayed because you waited for permission that no wise person ever expects to receive? Every time your conduct depends upon applause, your character becomes a servant of circumstances beyond your command. The mind that seeks constant approval cannot remain steady. It rises when praised and falls when criticized. It becomes proud when admired and discouraged when ignored. Such a life is unstable because it has placed its foundation in something that changes with every passing conversation. No lasting tranquility can be built upon opinions that belong to other minds. What another person thinks today may change tomorrow. If your peace changes with it, then you have accepted a master who cannot even govern himself. Many imagine that reputation and character are the same thing. They are not. Reputation exists in the thoughts of others. Character exists in your own choices. One belongs to the crowd. The other belongs entirely to you. The first is uncertain, shifting, and often mistaken. The second is shaped by every deliberate act of justice, moderation, courage, and honesty. To exchange character for reputation is to abandon what is real for something that has never truly belonged to you. You cannot enter another person's mind and arrange their judgments according to your wishes. You cannot force understanding where confusion already lives. You cannot demand fairness from every voice you encounter. Yet many people exhaust themselves attempting exactly this impossible labor. They replay conversations, imagine better responses, fear unseen criticism, and invent endless strategies for controlling impressions they will never possess. This effort consumes energy that should have been devoted to governing the only thing truly entrusted to them, their own reason. When another person speaks about you, pause before accepting their words as a measure of yourself. Ask first whether the statement concerns your conduct or merely their perception. If it reveals a genuine fault, receive it with gratitude because correction strengthens character. If it reflects misunderstanding, resentment, or ignorance, why should you permit another person's confusion to become your burden? Their judgment belongs to them. Your responsibility begins and ends with examining whether your own actions remain aligned with virtue. There is remarkable freedom in admitting that not every accusation deserves defense. Many people waste years trying to explain themselves to those who have already chosen not to understand. Explanation becomes endless because the goal is impossible. A mind determined to misunderstand will discover fresh reasons no matter how carefully you speak. Wisdom knows when speech serves truth and when silence better protects integrity. Not every opinion requires your participation. Each morning, before entering the company of others, establish your allegiance. Decide that your loyalty belongs first to sound judgment rather than public approval. Remind yourself that you may be praised without deserving it and criticized without earning it. Neither condition changes the moral quality of your actions. If your conscience remains clear after honest examination, allow that clarity to be sufficient. The approval of reason outweighs the applause of 1,000 uncertain voices. Carry this discipline throughout the day by watching how often your attention turns outward. Notice how quickly the mind begins wondering what others think. Notice how frequently decisions become negotiations with imagined observers. This invisible audience quietly influences clothing, speech, ambition, hesitation, even moments of kindness. Yet most of these imagined judges are occupied with their own concerns. The prison often exists entirely within your own assumptions. When you feel the desire to impress someone, stop and examine that impulse carefully. Ask yourself whether you seek admiration because you have forgotten the value of your own character. The desire to appear important usually grows strongest when inner conviction grows weakest. A person secure in virtue has little need to decorate himself with the opinions of strangers. His satisfaction comes from acting rightly, whether noticed or overlooked. Likewise, examine your fear of criticism. Fear often magnifies consequences far beyond reality. A careless remark from another person may linger in your memory for weeks, not because the words possessed unusual power, but because you continued feeding them with your own attention. The mind repeatedly revisits what it refuses to release. Every return grants fresh strength to something that should have faded long ago. Refuse to nourish unnecessary burdens through repeated reflection. This requires another important discipline, separating external voices from internal judgment. You hear an opinion, that hearing is unavoidable. Believing it without examination is optional. Between those two moments stands your freedom. Instead of immediately accepting praise or blame, place every opinion before reason. Ask whether it reveals something requiring correction. If it does, improve yourself quietly. If it does not, let it pass without resentment. Neither vanity nor bitterness serves the disciplined soul. Do not mistake indifference toward opinion for contempt toward people. The wise person remains respectful, attentive, and willing to learn from others. He simply refuses to surrender responsibility for judging himself. He listens without becoming dependent. He considers advice without abandoning discernment. He welcomes truth regardless of its source, while refusing to become emotionally captive to every passing remark. This balance preserves both humility and independence. Throughout history, those who acted according to reason often encounters misunderstanding before recognition. If they had measured every decision by immediate approval, many worthy actions would never have been attempted. Virtue cannot wait until every observer agrees. Justice remains justice even when unpopular. Honesty remains honesty even when inconvenient. Self-restraint remains valuable even when mocked. Let your standard remain unchanged by temporary applause or temporary rejection. Practice speaking truthfully without calculating every possible reaction. This does not mean becoming harsh or careless with words. It means removing the hidden desire to control how every sentence will be received. Speak with fairness, restraint, and sincerity. Once your duty is complete, release the outcome. Another person's interpretation belongs to their judgment, not yours. Trying to manage both your own conduct and everyone else's conclusions creates endless exhaustion. There is another subtle danger hidden within praise. Pleasant words can weaken discipline just as easily as unpleasant ones. Praise invites complacency if accepted carelessly. You begin protecting your image instead of refining your character. You repeat what earns approval instead of what remains true. Gradually, your conduct serves admiration rather than virtue. Therefore, receive praise with the same calm examination you apply to criticism. Neither deserves immediate agreement. A valuable morning exercise is to remind yourself that today's opinions will disappear faster than today's actions. Words spoken about you will fade into memory. Your conduct will remain within your own character. Therefore, invest your greatest effort where permanence exists. Strengthen honesty rather than reputation. Strengthen patience rather than popularity. Strengthen justice rather than appearance. These possessions accompany you long after public attention has moved elsewhere. Another daily practice is deliberate simplicity. Resist the urge to display every achievement, defend every success, or advertise every good intention. Quiet excellence builds stronger character than constant recognition. Perform worthy actions because they deserve to be done, not because they deserve witnesses. Hidden virtue trains sincerity. Public approval often trains performance. The soul grows strongest when its best actions require no audience. Be attentive also to comparison. Comparison quietly invites dependence upon opinion because it shifts attention away from your own duty toward another person's circumstances. Someone appears wealthier, more admired, more accomplished, or more influential. Immediately, the restless mind begins measuring itself by standards that were never assigned to it. This habit destroys gratitude and weakens purpose. Your task is not becoming another person. Your task is fulfilling your own responsibilities with integrity. Whenever comparison appears, return immediately to what belongs to you. Another person's success cannot diminish your capacity for justice. Another person's recognition cannot reduce your opportunity for wisdom. Another person's fortune cannot prevent you from acting honorably today. Character never depends upon competition. It depends entirely upon choice. At day's end, examine your relationship with approval honestly. Ask yourself where you sought admiration instead of truth. Ask where fear of criticism silenced necessary action. Ask where another person's opinion occupied your thoughts longer than your own conscience deserved. Ask where vanity disguised itself as ambition. Ask where humility remained intact despite misunderstanding. This evening examination gradually reveals the hidden places where dependence still survives. Do not become discouraged when you discover these weaknesses. Discovery is progress because unseen chains cannot be removed. Every honest observation weakens the hold of false dependence. Every corrected motive strengthens inward freedom. Improvement begins the moment self-deception ends. Remember also that every human being forms opinions according to limited knowledge. No one sees the complete story of another life. People judge isolated moments without witnessing years of quiet struggle. They interpret actions through their own experiences, fears, expectations, and misunderstandings. Why should you permit incomplete information to define your inner condition? Even your own judgment requires careful examination. How much more cautiously should you receive the judgments of others? The disciplined person therefore seeks a higher measure. Before sleep, he does not ask whether everyone approved of him. He asks whether he remained faithful to justice when dishonesty appeared attractive. He asks whether self-restraint survived temptation. He asks whether patience endured inconvenience. He asks whether truth guided speech. These questions refine character because they direct attention toward what genuinely belongs to him. Mental freedom is not achieved by escaping society. It is achieved by living within society without becoming enslaved by its changing opinions. You may hear praise without becoming proud. You may hear blame without becoming resentful. You may receive misunderstanding without abandoning patience. You may stand alone without believing yourself abandoned. Such freedom cannot be granted by another person because it arises entirely from disciplined judgment. The world will continue producing endless opinions. Some will be thoughtful, others careless, some generous, others unfair. None possess authority over your character unless you voluntarily surrender that authority. Guard this truth carefully. Your mind is too valuable to become public property. Let others govern their own judgments while you govern your own conduct. From this day forward, refuse to measure yourself by voices that cannot see into your conscience. Measure yourself instead by the quiet standard that never changes. Did you act with integrity when compromise appeared easier? Did you preserve fairness when resentment invited revenge? Did you choose moderation when excess promised pleasure? Did you remain truthful when deception offered advantage? These questions build a freedom that no criticism can imprison and no praise can corrupt. Walk into tomorrow carrying this understanding firmly within you. Approval may come or disappear. Reputation may rise or fall. Opinions may multiply beyond counting. Let them move as they will. Your task remains unchanged. Protect the sovereignty of your own judgment. Preserve the independence of your own reason. Let your character answer to virtue alone, and your mind will discover a freedom that no crowd has the power to take away. Number 5. Discipline perception. Transform every challenge. The quality of your life is determined long before you take action. It is determined by the way you see what stands before you. Two people can encounter the same hardship, breathe the same air, hear the same words, and walk away carrying entirely different lives within them. One leaves defeated, convinced that fate has turned against him. The other leaves strengthened, grateful for another opportunity to refine his character. The difference is not hidden in the event. It is hidden in perception. Before any challenge reaches your hands, it first passes through your judgment. If that judgment is careless, every difficulty becomes heavier than it truly is. If that judgment is disciplined, even adversity becomes useful. Most people never question the first impression that enters their mind. They assume that because something appears frightening, it must truly be dangerous. Because something feels unfair, it must have ruined them. Because something is painful, it must also be meaningless. This is how suffering quietly multiplies. Reality presents a single event, but the undisciplined mind surrounds it with fear, resentment, exaggeration, and endless prediction. Soon the person is no longer carrying the challenge itself. They are carrying the burden created by their own interpretation. Your first responsibility is not to solve every problem immediately. Your first responsibility is to see clearly. A clouded mind cannot produce a wise response. Before you ask what you should do, ask whether you are seeing the situation honestly. Strip away assumption. Remove emotional decoration. Refuse dramatic conclusions. Look only at what is actually present. The clearer your perception becomes, the lighter your unnecessary burdens become. There is a dangerous habit that quietly governs many lives. The habit is giving names to events before understanding them. A setback becomes failure, a delay becomes disaster, a disagreement becomes betrayal, a mistake becomes permanent defeat. Once these labels are accepted, the mind begins serving them instead of examining them. Yet the event itself has never demanded such conclusions. The labels came from judgment, not from reality. If judgment created them, disciplined judgment can remove them. When something unexpected interrupts your plans, do not ask, "Why is this happening to me?" That question encourages self-pity without producing wisdom. Ask instead, "What part of this belongs to my responsibility?" Immediately the mind turns away from complaint and toward action. Perhaps your responsibility is patience. Perhaps it is honesty. Perhaps it is endurance. Perhaps it is accepting what cannot be changed. Whatever the answer, you have already stepped out of helplessness and back into self-government. Every challenge carries two invitations. One invites you to become ruled by emotion. The other invites you to strengthen character. Only one can be accepted at a time. If you choose resentment, courage cannot grow beside it. If you choose panic, wisdom finds no room to speak. But if you choose careful judgment, every obstacle begins teaching something that comfort never could. Many people spend years trying to remove every inconvenience from their lives, believing peace will finally arrive once circumstances become easier. Yet every difficulty removed is soon replaced by another. External life refuses to remain still. If your tranquility depends upon perfect conditions, you will wait forever. True stability begins when you stop demanding an easy path and begin developing a stronger mind. The challenge is not your enemy. Your refusal to learn from it is. Each morning, prepare your perception before you prepare your schedule. Sit quietly for a few moments and remind yourself that today will contain uncertainty. Plans may change, people may disappoint you, your body may grow tired, someone may misunderstand your intentions, something valuable may be delayed or even lost. None of these possibilities should surprise you. They belong to the nature of human life. By expecting them calmly, you remove much of their power to disturb you. Then make a simple commitment before the day begins. Decide that no event will receive your judgment before receiving your examination. This single discipline protects the mind from countless unnecessary disturbances. You are not refusing reality, you are refusing haste. Hasty judgment is the doorway through which confusion enters. As the day unfolds, practice describing events with complete precision. If a meeting is cancelled, say only that the meeting was cancelled. Do not add that your entire day is ruined. If someone disagrees with you, acknowledge only the disagreement. Do not immediately conclude that respect has disappeared. If you experience failure, admit the failure honestly, but do not transform one unsuccessful effort into a permanent identity. Precise perception prevents unnecessary suffering from taking root. Notice how quickly imagination tries to outrun facts. A small problem appears, and the mind immediately races weeks or months into the future, constructing outcomes that do not yet exist. This habit steals attention from the only place where wisdom can act, the present moment. You cannot respond wisely to imagined disasters because they have not arrived. Return your attention to what is before you now. The mind that remains present remains capable. One of the greatest forms of inner discipline is refusing to argue with reality. Once an event has occurred, resistance cannot erase it, anger cannot reverse it, complaint cannot undo it, endless wishing cannot reshape it. Reality asks only one question after every event: how will you respond? The sooner you stop negotiating with what has already happened, the sooner your energy becomes available for noble action. This does not mean pretending that pain is pleasant. Loss remains loss. Illness remains illness. Disappointment remains disappointment. Stoic discipline never requires dishonesty. It requires refusing to let pain dictate your character. A difficult event can affect your comfort without corrupting your integrity. It can change your circumstances without changing your principles. Protect that distinction carefully. It is the foundation of inner freedom. Another powerful practice is learning to separate the challenge from your identity. You failed at a task. That does not make you a failure. You encountered rejection. That does not diminish your worth. You experienced fear. That does not mean courage has disappeared. Events describe moments. They do not define souls. Whenever you confuse temporary conditions with permanent identity, you surrender the possibility of growth before growth even begins. Pay close attention to your conversations with yourself during hardship. The undisciplined mind speaks in absolutes. It says, nothing ever works. It says, everything is against me. It says, there is no point trying. These statements feel convincing because emotion speaks loudly, but volume is not evidence. Replace sweeping conclusions with careful observation. Speak only what can honestly be known. In doing so, you weaken despair and strengthen reason. There will be times when another person becomes the source of difficulty. Their behavior may be careless, selfish, impatient, or unfair. Your first instinct may be to mirror their disorder. Resist that temptation. Another person's lack of discipline does not excuse your own. Their character belongs to them. Yours belongs to you. If they choose anger, you still possess the freedom to choose composure. If they choose deception, you still possess the freedom to choose honesty. Never allow another person's weakness to become permission for abandoning your own principles. Practice viewing difficult people as opportunities rather than interruptions. Every demanding personality gives you another chance to strengthen patience. Every unreasonable conversation tests your ability to remain measured. Every insult invites self-command. Without these encounters, many virtues would remain untested and therefore undeveloped. Character grows through use, not theory. There is another illusion that must be abandoned. Many believe that success means avoiding hardship altogether, but a life free from challenge often leaves the soul weak, impatient, and dependent upon comfort. Difficulties reveal hidden attachments that ease keeps concealed. They expose impatience, pride, fear, and excessive desire. This revelation is uncomfortable yet deeply valuable. You cannot improve what you refuse to see. At midday, pause briefly and examine your perception. Ask yourself whether you have accepted any unnecessary judgments since morning. Have you exaggerated an inconvenience? Have you assumed the worst without evidence? Have you blamed circumstances instead of directing attention toward your own conduct? This short examination prevents small errors from becoming deeply rooted habits. You must also train yourself to recognize that every challenge contains something beyond the challenge itself. It contains an opportunity to practice virtue. Without disappointment, patience remains only an idea. Without temptation, self-restraint remains untested. Without uncertainty, courage never matures. Every hardship presents material from which character may be shaped. The event is outside your command. The use you make of it always remains within your reach. As evening arrives, do not judge the day according to comfort or success alone. Judge it according to the quality of your perception. Did you see events clearly, or did you allow emotion to distort them? Did you remain faithful to reason when appearances tempted you toward panic? Did you preserve fairness when frustration invited bitterness? Did you distinguish between facts and assumptions? These questions refine the mind more effectively than endless self-criticism. If you discover that your perception failed you, do not become discouraged. Failure, honestly examined, becomes instruction. Every mistaken judgment reveals where future vigilance is required. The purpose of reflection is not self-condemnation, it is self-correction. You become stronger not by pretending perfection, but by recognizing error before it hardens into character. There will always be things beyond your command. Seasons change, fortune shifts, bodies weaken, relationships evolve, plans dissolve. Time carries everything forward, whether you approve or not. Yet within all this movement, one thing remains available each day: the ability to meet reality with disciplined perception. This ability cannot eliminate hardship, but it can prevent hardship from ruling your inner life. Imagine ending each day knowing that no circumstance succeeded in forcing you away from wisdom. Imagine carrying disappointment without becoming bitter, uncertainty without becoming anxious, success without becoming proud, criticism without becoming resentful, and praise without becoming dependent. This is not a fantasy reserved for extraordinary people. It is the natural result of repeated discipline applied to perception. Your mind becomes what it repeatedly practices. If it practices exaggeration, life appears unbearable. If it practices resentment, every inconvenience feels personal. If it practices careful judgment, challenges gradually lose their power to intimidate. The world itself remains unchanged, but your relationship with it is transformed because your perception has become governed by reason instead of impulse. Do not wait for easier circumstances before beginning this work. Begin with today's smallest inconvenience. When something interrupts your plans, refuse immediate complaint. When another person disappoints you, refuse immediate condemnation. When fear whispers its predictions, refuse immediate belief. Pause, observe, separate what is happening from what your imagination is adding. Then choose the response that strengthens your character rather than your emotions. This daily discipline is quiet. It earns little applause. Others may never notice it. Yet no external achievement equals its value. A person who has mastered perception cannot easily be defeated because every challenge becomes another occasion for wisdom. Every obstacle becomes another opportunity to practice justice, courage, moderation, and sound judgment. Every difficult day becomes another lesson instead of another wound. Carry this understanding into tomorrow. Do not ask for fewer challenges. Ask for clearer perception. Do not ask that life become lighter. Ask that your judgment become steadier. Do not measure your progress by how many hardships disappear. Measure it by how many hardships no longer steal your peace. When perception is disciplined, the world remains unpredictable, but the soul remains firm. And from that firmness comes a life guided not by circumstance, but by reason, where every challenge becomes another step toward lasting inner freedom. Number 6. Conquer fear through rational judgment. Fear rarely enters your life by breaking down the door. It usually arrives as a quiet suggestion, a single impression that asks for your agreement before it gains any strength. At first it is only a possibility, then it becomes a prediction. Soon it begins speaking as though the future has already been decided. Before long, your choices start obeying an event that has never happened. This is how fear quietly becomes the ruler of an undisciplined mind. It does not conquer you by force. It conquers you by convincing you to surrender your judgment before reality has even spoken. Look honestly at your own experience. How many opportunities have remained untouched because you imagined failure before taking the first step? How many conversations were avoided because you expected rejection without evidence? How many sleepless nights were spent preparing for disasters that never arrived? Fear often presents itself as wisdom, yet much of what it produces is hesitation, avoidance, and wasted strength. It promises protection while slowly shrinking the boundaries of your life. The first mistake is believing that fear itself is the enemy. It is not. Fear is an impression. It appears without asking permission. The true danger begins only when you mistake that impression for truth. The disciplined mind does not condemn itself for feeling fear. It questions fear before accepting its conclusions. There is a great difference between experiencing a fearful thought and allowing that thought to direct your conduct. One belongs to human nature. The other belongs to your choice. Many people imagine that courage is the absence of fear. That misunderstanding keeps them waiting for a confidence that never arrives. Courage is not created after fear disappears. Courage is created when reason remains faithful to what is right even while fear is present. The trembling hand can still perform a just action. The uncertain mind can still speak honestly. The anxious heart can still fulfill its duty. Virtue does not require perfect comfort. It requires steadfast judgment. Notice how fear enlarges everything it touches. A single mistake becomes a ruined future. One criticism becomes lasting humiliation. An uncertain outcome becomes certain defeat. Fear thrives on exaggeration because exaggeration weakens reason. Whenever your mind begins describing tomorrow as though it already knows what will happen, stop immediately. The future has not asked for your conclusions. You have supplied them yourself. Return to what is known instead of what is imagined. This is why rational judgment must become stronger than emotional prediction. Ask yourself simple questions whenever fear begins speaking. What facts do I actually possess? What assumptions have I added? Which part of this situation belongs to my responsibility? Which part never belonged to me in the first place? These questions interrupt fear before it grows into authority. They return the mind from imagination to reality. Every morning, before the day's uncertainties begin, prepare yourself inwardly. Do not promise yourself that nothing difficult will occur. Such promises are dishonest because life has never offered them. Instead, remind yourself that uncertainty is part of the human condition. You may succeed or fail, you may gain or lose, you may be praised or misunderstood. None of these possibilities prevent you from acting with integrity. Begin the day determined not to control outcomes, but to govern your own choices regardless of outcomes. The mind becomes frightened whenever it demands certainty from a world that cannot provide it. You want guarantees before acting. You want assurance before committing yourself. You want complete safety before accepting responsibility. Yet certainty has never belonged to human beings. Only present judgment belongs to you. When you stop demanding knowledge of tomorrow, you recover the freedom to live wisely today. Fear often disguises attachment. You fear losing what you have decided you cannot live without. You fear rejection because you have made approval into a necessity. You fear failure because success has become part of your identity. You fear change because comfort has become your master. Look carefully beneath every persistent fear, and you will usually discover an attachment demanding protection. Remove the false necessity, and fear begins losing its foundation. Train yourself each day to distinguish between what is essential and what is merely preferred. Comfort is pleasant but not essential. Praise is enjoyable but not essential. Wealth may be useful but not essential. Reputation may open doors but not essential. What remains essential is the quality of your character. No circumstance can prevent you from choosing honesty, patience, justice, moderation, or courage unless you willingly abandon them. Once you understand this, many fears lose their ability to command you. One practical exercise is to examine the worst outcome your mind keeps presenting. Do not flee from it. Look directly at it with calm attention. Ask yourself whether it would truly destroy your ability to live with virtue. In many cases, the answer is no. You might lose money without losing integrity. You might lose status without losing self-respect. You might lose comfort without losing wisdom. The mind often mistakes inconvenience for catastrophe. Rational judgment restores proper proportion. Another discipline is to reduce fear by reducing unnecessary imagination. Your mind enjoys completing unfinished stories. It fills unknown spaces with alarming conclusions. If someone delays replying, fear invents rejection. If plans become uncertain, fear invents failure. If a challenge appears, fear invents defeat. Refuse this habit. Stay with the facts. The facts rarely produce as much suffering as the stories built upon them. There will be moments when fear urges immediate retreat. Before obeying, pause long enough to ask whether withdrawal serves virtue or merely protects comfort. These are not always the same. Sometimes wisdom requires stepping back. Sometimes it requires stepping forward despite discomfort. The difference can only be discovered by reason, never by fear itself. Fear always argues for safety. Reason asks what duty requires. Pay attention to the language you use when speaking to yourself. The frightened mind says, "I cannot handle this." Rational judgment asks, "What is required of me now?" Fear says, "Everything depends on this outcome." Reason says, "Only my conduct belongs to me." Fear says, "If this goes badly, everything is ruined." Reason says, "No external event can force me to abandon virtue." These quiet corrections gradually reshape the soul. Throughout the day, practice meeting small fears deliberately. Speak when honesty asks you to speak, even if your voice shakes. Admit mistakes without hiding behind excuses. Accept correction without defending your pride. Begin difficult tasks before confidence arrives. Every small act of courage strengthens the mind for greater trials. Character grows through repeated action, not through comfortable reflection alone. Do not underestimate the value of voluntary discomfort. Occasionally choose what is slightly inconvenient, instead of always pursuing ease. Accept a minor inconvenience without complaint. Delay an unnecessary pleasure. Endure a difficult conversation instead of avoiding it. These exercises teach the mind that discomfort is survivable. Fear weakens whenever it discovers that you are capable of enduring more than it predicted. You must also examine how fear influences your relationships. Many conflicts are not born from malice, but from hidden insecurity. People conceal truth because they fear disapproval. They become controlling because they fear uncertainty. They become jealous because they fear loss. They become dishonest because they fear consequences. If you wish to preserve integrity, refuse to let fear decide how you treat others. Let justice determine your conduct, even when anxiety urges deception or manipulation. Another powerful exercise is to observe fear without identifying yourself with it. Instead of saying, "I am afraid," say, "Fear is present." This small difference reminds you that fear is an experience passing through the mind, not the ruler of your identity. You remain the one responsible for deciding whether that experience deserves obedience. Awareness creates distance. Distance allows judgment to return. As evening approaches, review your day with complete honesty. Do not ask whether you felt fearless. Ask whether fear succeeded in governing your actions. Where did you surrender too quickly? Where did you avoid responsibility without good reason? Where did you choose comfort over integrity? Where did you remain faithful to reason despite uncertainty? These questions gradually expose fear's hidden influence, while strengthening your commitment to wiser conduct tomorrow. Never become discouraged by discovering fear within yourself. Every human being encounters it. The difference lies in what follows. The unexamined person allows fear to become habit. The disciplined person uses every fearful moment as another opportunity to strengthen judgment. Progress is measured not by the disappearance of fear, but by the growing authority of reason over it. Remember that time itself exposes many fears as illusions. Events once dreaded become ordinary memories. Difficult conversations eventually pass. Failures become instruction. Losses become teachers. What once seemed unbearable often becomes the very experience that deepened your wisdom. Had you remained imprisoned by fear, that growth would never have occurred. Therefore, do not let present anxiety prevent future understanding. There will always be circumstances beyond your command. Illness may come, fortune may change, loved ones may depart, plans may collapse. None of these realities are improved by fear. Fear adds suffering without adding preparation. Rational judgment, however, prepares the soul by strengthening its ability to respond honorably regardless of events. This is genuine readiness. When another person's fear spreads around you, do not borrow it. Crowds often magnify anxiety because people repeat one another's impressions without examination. Remain calm enough to inspect the situation yourself. Do not confuse widespread panic with reliable judgment. Truth is not determined by the number of frightened voices surrounding you. Your responsibility remains exactly the same. Examine carefully, choose wisely, and act justly. Protect yourself also from fearing the opinions of others. Many abandon worthy actions because they imagine criticism. Yet another person's judgment has never possessed the authority to define your character. If your conscience remains aligned with reason after sincere examination, let that be sufficient. Approval comes and goes. Integrity remains. There is remarkable freedom in admitting that you control far less than fear demands you control. You cannot command every result. You cannot guarantee success. You cannot prevent every disappointment, but you can refuse dishonesty. You can refuse cowardice. You can refuse resentment. You can refuse to betray your principles for temporary relief. Within these choices lies a freedom untouched by uncertainty. Imagine living one day without negotiating with fear. Imagine answering each situation by asking not what feels safest, but what is most honorable. Imagine accepting uncertainty without treating it as an enemy. Imagine allowing reason to guide each decision while fear remains only a passing visitor. Such a life does not become easier, but it becomes steadier, and steadiness is stronger than comfort. The work before you is simple, though never effortless. Each morning prepare your judgment. Throughout the day examine every fearful impression before accepting it. Separate what belongs to your choice from what belongs to fortune. Perform the duty that stands before you without demanding certainty about the result. Each evening review where reason governed well and where fear quietly took command. Repeat this discipline daily until calm judgment becomes more familiar than anxious prediction. You do not conquer fear by fighting every frightening thought. You conquer it by refusing to grant those thoughts authority they have not earned. Let reason become the judge. Let virtue become the aim. Let your actions answer to principle instead of prediction. Then fear may still knock at the door of your mind, but it will no longer be welcomed as its ruler. From that moment onward, your life begins to be directed not by imagined dangers, but by the enduring strength of disciplined judgment. Number 7. Accept reality without emotional resistance. Your greatest struggle is often not with reality itself, but with your refusal to allow reality to be what it already is. Long before exhaustion reaches your body, resistance has already exhausted your mind. You argue with events that have already happened. You resent words that have already been spoken. You replay moments that cannot be changed. You demand that the world become different before allowing yourself to become peaceful. In doing so, you place your inner life under the authority of circumstances that were never yours to command. Consider how much of your suffering is created after the event has ended. A mistake occurs, yet you continue reliving it long after action is possible. Someone disappoints you, yet the conversation continues inside your mind for days. A plan fails, yet you refuse to release the image of how it should have unfolded. Reality presents one moment. Resistance stretches that moment into weeks, months, or even years. The event passes through time. Emotional resistance refuses to let it pass through you. You often believe that resisting reality proves strength. You imagine that constant frustration demonstrates high standards or deep commitment. But resistance without purpose is not strength. It is friction. It drains the energy that should have been directed toward wise action. A disciplined mind does not waste itself demanding a different past or a different present. It asks only one useful question. Now that this is true, what is the honorable response? Acceptance is one of the most misunderstood disciplines of the examined life. Many confuse it with surrender, weakness, or resignation. They believe that accepting reality means approving of injustice or abandoning effort. Nothing could be further from the truth. Acceptance simply means seeing clearly before acting wisely. You cannot respond intelligently to facts that you refuse to acknowledge. Denial clouds judgment. Complaint delays action. Acceptance restores clarity. Imagine standing before a river flowing in its natural direction. You may curse its current. You may demand that it reverse itself. You may exhaust your strength striking the water with your hands. The river remains unchanged while your strength disappears. Yet the moment you understand its direction, you can cross it, follow it, or build beside it. Reality asks for understanding before resistance. Only then can reason determine the proper course. Every day presents countless opportunities to practice this discipline. You wake later than intended. Someone interrupts your plans. Your body grows tired. A task proves more difficult than expected. Another person fails to meet your expectations. None of these events ask for outrage. They ask for judgment. The event itself is complete. Your response has not yet been chosen. Between those two realities lies the only territory that truly belongs to you. One reason emotional resistance becomes so powerful is because the mind confuses preference with necessity. You prefer success, and soon you believe success must occur. You prefer agreement, and soon you believe everyone should understand you. You prefer comfort, and soon inconvenience feels like injustice. Preference quietly becomes demand. Demand creates resistance whenever life refuses to obey. The wiser path is different. Hold your preferences lightly while holding your principles firmly. Each morning, before stepping into the uncertainty of the day, remind yourself that events will not arrange themselves according to your wishes. People will follow their own judgments. Fortune will continue changing without asking your permission. Circumstances will unfold beyond your complete understanding. Expecting otherwise prepares the mind for disappointment. Accepting this truth prepares the mind for steadiness. Then establish your intention clearly. Say to yourself that whatever arrives today will first be met with observation rather than reaction. Refuse to declare anything unbearable before examining it carefully. Refuse to label anything disastrous before asking whether your character has truly been harmed. Most events affect comfort, very few affect virtue. Learn to distinguish between the two with unwavering discipline. Pay attention to how quickly emotional resistance enters ordinary situations. A traffic delay becomes an insult to your schedule. A cancelled meeting becomes an attack on your plans. An unexpected expense becomes proof that life is unfair. Yet none of these conclusions exist within the events themselves. They are judgments added afterward. Remove the unnecessary judgment, and the burden immediately becomes lighter. The inconvenience remains, but unnecessary suffering begins to dissolve. This does not require suppressing emotion. The disciplined life never asks you to pretend that disappointment feels pleasant or that grief does not exist. Human feeling deserves honesty. What must be governed is the temptation to allow feeling to become the final authority. Pain may speak first, but reason must speak last. The first impression belongs to nature. Your lasting judgment belongs to you. Whenever something difficult occurs, pause before asking whether it should have happened. Instead, ask whether it has happened. This simple shift changes everything. The first question keeps the mind trapped in argument with reality. The second brings the mind back into contact with truth. Only from truth can wise action begin. Reality never waits for your approval before unfolding. Your task is to meet it with dignity rather than denial. Notice also how often emotional resistance grows from attachment to imagined futures. You build detailed expectations about how people should behave, how plans should unfold, how recognition should arrive, and how life should reward your efforts. When reality refuses to follow those private expectations, frustration appears. Yet reality never promised to fulfill imagined scripts. The disappointment comes less from events themselves than from insisting they follow a story written only in your own mind. A powerful daily exercise is to separate facts from demands. Write down what has actually occurred, using only simple descriptions free from emotional interpretation. Then write down everything your mind insists should have been different. This second list often reveals the true source of inner conflict. The facts cannot always be changed. The demands can always be examined. Once examined, many of them lose their authority. There will be moments when life places genuine hardship before you. Loss may enter your home. Illness may alter your plans. Relationships may end despite your sincerity. Effort may not produce immediate success. In these moments, emotional resistance becomes especially tempting because accepting reality feels unbearable. Yet refusing reality never lessens pain. It only divides your strength. One part struggles against the event itself, while the other part struggles against the fact that the event exists. Acceptance reunites those divided strengths and directs them toward endurance. Learn to respect the difference between influence and control. You may influence many things through wisdom, preparation, and effort, but control belongs to far fewer circumstances than the mind wishes to admit. You influence your work through diligence, yet not every outcome. You influence relationships through kindness, yet not every response. You influence health through discipline, yet not every condition. Once you understand this distinction, much unnecessary resistance quietly disappears. Throughout the day, whenever frustration arises, ask yourself one honest question. Am I resisting reality, or am I responding to it? These two paths may appear similar from a distance, but they produce entirely different lives. Resistance clings to what cannot be changed. Response acts upon what remains possible. One weakens the spirit, the other strengthens it. Another valuable practice is to observe how often you use the words "if only." If only they had listened. If only the opportunity had remained. If only I had acted differently. If only life had been fair. These thoughts may appear harmless, but they quietly anchor attention to places where action is impossible. Replace them with another question. Given what is now true, what remains within my responsibility? This question returns your mind to ground where virtue can still be practiced. Do not become impatient with reality because it refuses to move according to your timetable. Growth requires seasons. Understanding often arrives after confusion. Character develops through repeated testing, not immediate comfort. If every difficulty disappeared the moment it appeared, patience would never mature, endurance would remain unformed, self-command would remain untested. What you often call delay may simply be the time required for wisdom to deepen. There is another subtle form of resistance that deserves careful attention. It appears whenever you resent the ordinary responsibilities of daily life. You wish every task felt meaningful. You wish every effort produced visible reward. Yet much of life consists of quiet duties performed without applause. Preparing honestly, working faithfully, speaking truthfully, caring for others, correcting your mistakes, and governing your own mind rarely receive public admiration. Still, these ordinary actions shape character far more deeply than extraordinary moments. As evening approaches, examine where you resisted the day instead of cooperating with it. Ask yourself whether anger accomplished anything that calm judgment could not have done better. Ask whether complaint improved your circumstances or merely darkened your perception. Ask where expectations became demands and demands became suffering. Then ask where acceptance allowed reason to remain steady despite difficulty. These questions strengthen tomorrow's judgment. If you discover moments of failure, do not resist those discoveries as well. Accept them honestly. A fault recognized without excuse becomes the beginning of improvement. A fault denied continues ruling the soul unseen. Self-examination requires the same acceptance you owe external reality. Look directly at your own shortcomings without hatred and without self-protection. Truth remains valuable even when uncomfortable. Understand that accepting reality does not diminish ambition, it purifies ambition. Instead of demanding impossible control over fortune, you devote your strength to excellence of character. Instead of insisting upon guaranteed success, you commit yourself to worthy effort. Instead of measuring each day by external reward, you measure it by integrity, patience, justice, and disciplined judgment. These measures remain available regardless of circumstance. Imagine the freedom that grows from no longer arguing with existence itself. Imagine waking each morning ready to meet whatever arrives without demanding that it first satisfy your expectations. Imagine facing disappointment without bitterness, uncertainty without panic, delay without resentment, and success without attachment. Such steadiness cannot be purchased, inherited, or granted by another person. It is built through daily agreement with reality and daily obedience to reason. The world will continue changing beyond your command. People will continue acting according to their own understanding. Fortune will continue rising and falling without explanation. Time will continue carrying everything forward. None of these truths threaten your character unless you insist they should be different. Your true work has never been controlling the world. Your true work has always been governing yourself within it. From this day forward, stop spending your strength resisting what has already become real. Direct that strength toward choosing what is just, honest, patient, and wise within the reality before you. Let facts be facts, without adding unnecessary rebellion. Let circumstances become the training ground for virtue, rather than the excuse for disorder. Let each challenge remind you that peace does not belong to those who receive the easiest life. It belongs to those who stop fighting reality and begin shaping themselves through it. The disciplined soul does not ask life to become gentler before becoming calm. It chooses calm first. It does not demand certainty before acting honorably. It acts honorably within uncertainty. It does not wait for perfect conditions before practicing wisdom. It practices wisdom precisely because conditions are imperfect. When emotional resistance finally gives way to clear acceptance, you discover that reality was never your greatest obstacle. The undisciplined judgment resisting reality was, and once that judgment is brought under reason, even the hardest days become opportunities to live with unwavering dignity. Number 8. Strengthen character with daily discipline. Character is not built during extraordinary moments. It is built in the ordinary hours that most people overlook. The choices you make when no one is watching, the thoughts you permit to remain unchallenged, the habits you repeat without reflection, and the duties you either fulfill or avoid are quietly shaping the person you become. Many wait for a dramatic turning point that will suddenly transform their lives. They expect one decision, one opportunity, or one moment of inspiration to accomplish what only disciplined practice can achieve. Yet the soul does not change through isolated moments. It changes through repeated obedience to reason. Look carefully at your own days. They may appear ordinary, but they are never empty. Every morning presents another opportunity either to strengthen your character or to weaken it through neglect. Every conversation allows you to practice honesty or indulge in deception. Every frustration asks whether patience governs your conduct or whether impulse still rules your mind. Every temptation reveals whether your principles remain stronger than your desires. Life is constantly examining you, even when you imagine nothing important is happening. Many people admire virtue while avoiding the discipline required to cultivate it. They speak about integrity, courage, moderation, and justice, as though these qualities simply appear within fortunate individuals. They forget that every stable character is the result of countless deliberate choices. A disciplined life is not created by wishing to become better. It is created by repeatedly acting according to what is right, especially when convenience encourages something easier. Do not measure yourself by your intentions. Intentions often sound noble because they cost nothing. Measure yourself by your repeated conduct. If you promise patience but answer every inconvenience with irritation, your habits reveal your true condition. If you praise honesty but protect yourself with excuses whenever you fail, your actions speak more clearly than your words. Character never asks what you hoped to become. It asks what you consistently choose to practice. The greatest obstacle to discipline is the belief that one neglected day carries little consequence. You postpone self-examination until tomorrow. You delay necessary correction until next week. You excuse one careless reaction because you believe it will not matter. Yet every repeated excuse quietly becomes a habit, and every habit eventually shapes the whole direction of a life. A single careless moment may pass unnoticed. Hundreds of such moments become character. Begin every morning before the demands of the world begin speaking to you. Sit quietly and prepare your judgment before circumstances attempt to influence it. Remind yourself that today's purpose is not merely to complete tasks or achieve success. Your first purpose is to preserve the integrity of your own mind. Whatever duties await you, perform them without allowing external events to determine your inner condition. Decide in advance that no praise will make you careless, no criticism will make you unjust, and no inconvenience will persuade you to abandon self-command. After this reflection, consider the responsibilities already placed before you. Do not become distracted by ambitions beyond today's reach. Character grows through faithful attention to present duty. If your responsibility is to work honestly, then work honestly. If your responsibility is to care for your family with patience, then practice patience. If your responsibility is to correct a fault within yourself, then begin without delay. Greatness rarely appears through dramatic gestures. It is assembled through thousands of faithful actions performed one after another. As the day unfolds, guard your attention carefully. The mind naturally drifts toward distraction because distraction demands less effort than awareness. You may complete many outward tasks while remaining inwardly absent from your own conduct. Discipline begins by returning attention to yourself repeatedly. Notice the thoughts entering your mind. Notice the motives behind your actions. Notice the emotions attempting to govern your responses. Observation is the beginning of mastery because nothing can be corrected while it remains unseen. Whenever difficulty appears, resist the temptation to ask whether the day has become worse. Instead, ask whether another opportunity for discipline has arrived. A delayed appointment becomes training in patience. An unfair accusation becomes training in composure. A difficult decision becomes training in wisdom. A demanding responsibility becomes training in perseverance. The disciplined person no longer divides life into pleasant moments and unpleasant moments. Every circumstance becomes material from which stronger character may be formed. Pay particular attention to small acts of self-command. These often appear insignificant, yet they possess remarkable influence. Speak only after examining whether your words serve truth. Complete the task before seeking unnecessary comfort. Admit an error without defending your pride. Keep a promise even when keeping it becomes inconvenient. Refuse to speak harshly simply because another person has done so first. These actions rarely receive admiration, but they quietly strengthen the foundation upon which every greater virtue depends. You must also discipline your relationship with desire. The undisciplined mind constantly seeks what feels pleasant while avoiding what feels demanding. It measures each decision by immediate satisfaction instead of lasting character. Yet desire changes from hour to hour. Reason remains constant. Before following any impulse, ask whether it serves the person you wish to become or merely satisfies the person you happen to be at this moment. This question separates temporary appetite from enduring principle. There will be days when discipline feels effortless and days when it feels burdensome. Never allow temporary ease or temporary difficulty to determine your commitment. A person who practices only when motivated remains dependent upon changing emotion. The disciplined soul acts because the action is right, not because the mood is favorable. Character grows strongest when duty continues despite reluctance. Another daily exercise is learning to welcome correction. Pride resists instruction because it fears appearing imperfect. Wisdom understands that unrecognized faults remain dangerous. Whenever someone reveals an error in your conduct, pause before defending yourself. Examine the criticism honestly. If it contains truth, receive it gratefully because it has exposed something requiring improvement. If it contains falsehood, let it pass without resentment. In either case, protect your peace by refusing to make wounded pride the center of your attention. Be equally careful with success. Achievement often weakens discipline more quietly than failure. After success, the mind begins believing that continued effort is unnecessary. Satisfaction slowly becomes complacency. Standards decline because yesterday's accomplishments create false security. Meet success with gratitude, but return immediately to your practice. Character is maintained through consistency, not through memories of past excellence. You will also discover that discipline requires restraint in speech. Many words are spoken simply to satisfy emotion rather than to express wisdom. Anger demands immediate expression. Vanity seeks recognition. Fear searches for reassurance. Complaint hopes for agreement. Before speaking, ask whether silence would better preserve justice, moderation, or truth. Words released without examination cannot be recalled. Disciplined speech protects both your own character and the peace of those around you. Do not neglect the discipline of simplicity. The soul becomes scattered when it chases countless unnecessary desires. Learn to distinguish between what enriches character and what merely entertains restless appetite. Possessions may increase while contentment decreases if desire remains undisciplined. Simplicity is not measured by the amount you own, but by the degree to which your peace remains independent of what you own. Throughout the afternoon, Pause briefly and examine your progress. Ask yourself whether reason still directs your choices or whether habit has quietly resumed control. Have you reacted without reflection? Have you pursued approval instead of integrity? Have you allowed frustration to shape your conduct? These moments of honest interruption prevent small failures from becoming established patterns. There is also great value in practicing deliberate inconvenience. Choose from time to time what is slightly more difficult, simply to remind yourself that comfort is not your master. Complete an unpleasant duty without delay. Accept a minor hardship without complaint. Resist an unnecessary indulgence. Such exercises teach the mind that peace does not depend upon constant ease. When greater difficulties eventually arrive, your character will already possess experience in endurance. Remember that discipline extends beyond visible actions into hidden thought. Outward restraint alone cannot produce inward freedom if resentment, envy, arrogance, or self-pity continue growing unnoticed within the mind. Examine your inner conversations carefully. Replace excuses with responsibility. Replace comparison with gratitude. Replace bitterness with understanding. Replace anxious speculation with careful judgment. The invisible habits of thought eventually become visible habits of conduct. Relationships provide another daily field for discipline. Every interaction invites you to practice fairness regardless of another person's behavior. Do not postpone kindness until others become deserving. Do not postpone honesty until honesty becomes easy. Another person's impatience does not justify your own. Another person's selfishness does not release you from justice. Your responsibility is never diminished by someone else's failure to fulfill theirs. As evening approaches, withdraw from the noise of the day and place yourself before your own conscience. Ask not whether the day was comfortable or productive. Ask whether you lived according to the principles you intended to uphold. Where did you remain steady? Where did emotion overcome judgment? Which temptation proved stronger than expected? Which responsibility did you avoid? Which virtue became more firmly established through practice? This examination is not meant to produce shame, it is meant to produce clarity. When you discover failure, correct it without delay. Refuse both despair and self-excuse. Despair convinces you improvement is impossible. Excuse convinces you improvement is unnecessary. Neither serves the disciplined life. Honest acknowledgement followed by determined correction is the only useful response. Every recognized fault becomes an opportunity to begin again with greater understanding. Do not seek perfection in a single day. Seek faithfulness in every day. The strongest character is not formed through sudden transformation, but through thousands of quiet returns to reason. Each morning offers another beginning. Each mistake offers another lesson. Each challenge offers another chance to strengthen the soul. Progress belongs to those who continue practicing long after excitement has disappeared. There will always be voices encouraging comfort over discipline. They will suggest that consistency is unnecessary, that principles may be adjusted whenever convenient, that small compromises carry no lasting consequence. Resist these voices with calm firmness. Every compromise accepted without examination weakens the authority of your own judgment. Every faithful act, however small, strengthens it. Understand that no one else can perform this work for you. Advice may guide you, circumstances may test you, others may encourage or discourage you, yet the daily formation of character remains entirely your own responsibility. No external achievement can replace inner discipline. No reputation can substitute for integrity. No success can compensate for a neglected soul. Imagine reaching the end of each day knowing that you met every circumstance with deliberate effort to remain just, truthful, moderate, and courageous. Imagine finding satisfaction not because every outcome favored you, but because your conduct remained worthy regardless of outcome. This quiet confidence cannot be taken away by changing fortune because it rests upon something that always remains within your command. Carry this commitment into tomorrow without waiting for ideal conditions. Begin before motivation appears. Continue after enthusiasm fades. Return to discipline each time distraction calls you elsewhere. Let every ordinary day become another opportunity to shape extraordinary character. In time, you will discover that true strength was never hidden inside remarkable moments. It was quietly built through countless faithful decisions made when no one else was watching, guided not by impulse or circumstance, but by reason that refused to abandon virtue. Number 9. Choose virtue over fleeting emotions. Before you speak, before you act, before you decide the direction of your day, one quiet struggle has already begun within you. It is the struggle between what you feel and what you know to be right. This conflict is present in every human life. Anger demands an immediate answer, while justice asks for patience. Fear urges retreat, while courage points toward duty. Desire promises satisfaction, while moderation reminds you of lasting consequences. Pride insists upon being defended, while wisdom invites honest correction. Every hour presents this choice again, and every decision gradually shapes the kind of person you become. Many people believe they are governed by reason when they are merely following emotion that has learned to speak in convincing language. Anger calls itself honesty. Envy disguises itself as ambition. Fear presents itself as caution. Pride claims to be self-respect. Self-pity pretends to be fairness. Unless you examine your inner life carefully, these emotions quietly take command while convincing you that you remain in control. The greatest deception is not being ruled by emotion. It is believing that emotion and reason are the same voice. Understand that emotions are not enemies to be hated. They arise naturally as impressions within the human mind. The danger appears only when you surrender judgment to them without examination. A passing feeling becomes harmful when it receives unquestioned authority. You are not responsible for every emotion that appears. You are responsible for every action that follows it. Between feeling and action stands your power to choose. That space is where character is formed. Consider how often a single moment of unchecked emotion creates consequences lasting far longer than the feeling itself. One sentence spoken in anger damages years of trust. One dishonest decision made from fear weakens the confidence you once possessed in your own integrity. One act of selfishness driven by desire leaves behind lasting regret. Emotions rise quickly and disappear quickly. The effects of actions remain. This is why a disciplined person never allows temporary feeling to become permanent direction. The mind that obeys emotion becomes unstable because emotion constantly changes. One morning confidence is abundant. By evening doubt has replaced it. One day praise creates enthusiasm. The next day criticism produces discouragement. If your conduct follows these changing currents, your life will never possess consistency. Virtue offers another foundation. Justice remains valuable whether you feel appreciated or ignored. Honesty remains necessary whether truth is comfortable or costly. Self-restraint remains worthy whether desire is quiet or intense. Principle remains steady even when emotion does not. Begin every morning by reminding yourself that your feelings cannot become your ruler unless you willingly hand them authority. Before entering the demands of the day, prepare your judgment. Tell yourself that discomfort will not excuse dishonesty. Frustration will not justify cruelty. Excitement will not replace careful thinking. Fear will not determine your duty. By making these decisions before emotion arrives, you strengthen the mind against impulses that would otherwise appear overwhelming. As the day begins, pay close attention to the first emotional responses that arise. Notice how quickly irritation appears when someone delays your plans. Observe how easily pride awakens when another person questions your ideas. Watch how desire immediately reaches toward comfort whenever effort becomes difficult. Do not condemn yourself for these experiences, simply observe them without immediately obeying them. Awareness interrupts habit. Once emotion is seen clearly, reason has an opportunity to speak. One of the most valuable disciplines is learning to delay your response. Emotion always demands urgency. It insists that action must happen immediately. Reason rarely speaks with such impatience. When anger urges you to answer instantly, wait. When excitement pushes you toward a reckless promise, pause. When disappointment tempts you to abandon your responsibilities, remain still for a moment. Often the wisest action becomes visible only after the first emotional wave has passed. Ask yourself a simple question whenever strong feeling appears. Does this emotion encourage virtue, or does it encourage impulse? This question redirects attention away from comfort and toward character. If anger encourages revenge, reject its guidance. If fear encourages dishonesty, refuse its instruction. If pride resists necessary correction, humble yourself willingly. Every examined emotion becomes an opportunity to strengthen judgment rather than weaken it. There is a subtle difference between experiencing emotion and becoming possessed by it. You may feel disappointment without becoming hopeless. You may experience grief without abandoning dignity. You may encounter fear without surrendering courage. You may recognize anger without speaking unjustly. Emotional experience belongs to human nature. Moral choice belongs to your character. Never confuse one with the other. Much unnecessary suffering begins because people attempt to arrange the entire world according to their emotional preferences. They expect every conversation to satisfy them, every effort to succeed immediately, every relationship to remain free from disappointment, and every circumstance to match their desires. When reality refuses these expectations, emotion declares that life has become unfair. Yet reality has never promised to obey personal preference. Wisdom begins when you stop asking life to protect your feelings and begin asking yourself to govern them. Practice examining your desires with complete honesty. Every desire should answer one question. Does this lead me toward virtue or merely toward pleasure? Many pleasant things are harmless, but pleasure itself cannot become the measure of a good life. A pleasant action that weakens integrity carries hidden cost. A difficult action that strengthens character carries lasting reward. Learn to value the condition of your soul more highly than the comfort of the present moment. Pay equal attention to resentment. It often survives because it provides the illusion of strength. Holding anger may feel like defending yourself, yet it quietly places your peace in the hands of another person's past actions. Each time you revisit an old injury, you permit it to influence another day of your life. Justice may require firm action. It never requires perpetual bitterness. Release what no longer serves virtue. Throughout the afternoon, examine the motives beneath your decisions. Are you acting because the choice is right or because it satisfies an emotional impulse? Sometimes the difference is difficult to detect. Pride often disguises itself as confidence. Fear often disguises itself as careful planning. Vanity often disguises itself as ambition. Honest examination removes these disguises. A disciplined mind asks not what feels most attractive, but what remains most honorable. Another daily exercise is refusing to identify yourself completely with passing emotions. Instead of saying, "This is who I am," remind yourself, "This is what I am experiencing." The distinction matters greatly. Feelings come and go like changing weather. Character is shaped by the decisions you make while that weather passes through. Do not build your identity upon conditions that never remain the same. There will be times when choosing virtue requires immediate sacrifice. Honesty may cost approval, patience may delay satisfaction, forgiveness may require setting aside wounded pride, self-restraint may deny a powerful desire, justice may demand effort without recognition. In those moments, remember that virtue often asks for what emotion resists. What feels difficult today may preserve your integrity for years to come. What feels satisfying today may burden your conscience tomorrow. Learn to welcome these moments of conflict instead of fearing them. They reveal where your character still requires strengthening. If there were no temptation, self-command would remain untested. If there were no fear, courage would remain undeveloped. If there were no frustration, patience would remain only an idea. Every emotional challenge offers another opportunity to practice the virtues you claim to value. Be especially careful during moments of success. Pleasant emotions can cloud judgment just as easily as painful ones. Excitement encourages overconfidence. Praise invites vanity. Achievement tempts complacency. Meet success with gratitude, but never abandon examination. Ask yourself whether your recent victories have strengthened humility or weakened it. Character is tested not only by hardship, but also by prosperity. When another person's emotions become disordered, refuse to imitate them. If someone speaks with anger, answer with fairness. If someone behaves impatiently, remain measured. If another person chooses dishonesty, preserve your truthfulness. Their emotional state belongs to them. Your response belongs to you. Never surrender your principles simply because another person has surrendered theirs. As evening arrives, withdraw from the noise of the day and examine yourself honestly. Which emotions attempted to govern your choices today? Where did reason remain firm? Where did impulse quietly prevail? Did desire persuade you to neglect a responsibility? Did pride prevent necessary correction? Did irritation weaken your patience? Did fear diminish your honesty? Ask these questions not to accuse yourself, but to illuminate tomorrow's work. When you discover failure, refuse both harsh self-condemnation and comfortable excuse. Accept responsibility calmly. Every mistake contains instruction if you are willing to learn from it. Every corrected fault strengthens future judgment. Character is not measured by never falling into error. It is measured by the willingness to recognize error quickly and return to virtue without delay. Remember that emotions become stronger when repeatedly indulged and weaker when repeatedly examined. Every time anger is questioned instead of obeyed, its authority diminishes. Every time fear is inspected before action, courage quietly grows. Every time desire is governed by moderation, freedom expands. The habits of the soul are shaped by repetition. What you practice today becomes easier tomorrow. There is profound peace in no longer asking your emotions to decide what kind of person you will be. Feelings may rise unexpectedly, but they no longer determine your direction. Instead, justice becomes your guide, wisdom becomes your counselor, courage becomes your companion, moderation becomes your safeguard. These qualities remain dependable because they do not depend upon changing moods or favorable circumstances. Imagine ending each day knowing that your actions were chosen by reason rather than dictated by impulse. Imagine carrying disappointment without becoming resentful, success without becoming arrogant, uncertainty without becoming fearful, and pleasure without becoming enslaved by it. Such stability cannot be purchased through comfort. It is earned through countless decisions in which virtue quietly triumphs over emotion. The world around you will continue changing. Fortune will rise and fall. People will praise you one day and misunderstand you the next. Your body will experience strength and weakness. Your emotions will continue appearing without invitation. Let them come, let them depart. Do not build your life upon what cannot remain. Build it instead upon the unchanging commitment to act with wisdom, justice, courage, and moderation, regardless of how you happen to feel. From this day forward, refuse to ask which choice offers the quickest emotional relief. Ask instead which choice leaves your character stronger when the emotion has passed. Feelings are temporary visitors. Virtue is the lasting companion of a disciplined life. Every time you choose principle over impulse, integrity over comfort, and reason over reaction, you reclaim the authority that has always belonged to you. In that quiet authority, the mind finds freedom, the soul finds stability, and the whole of life begins to move according to what is enduring rather than what is merely fleeting. Number 10. Become unshakable through self-mastery. Before you can become unshakable, you must first admit something uncomfortable. Most instability in life does not come from events outside you, but from the constant instability inside you. Your shifting judgments, your uncontrolled reactions, your impulsive complaints, your attachment to outcomes you do not govern, and your refusal to examine your own mind honestly have been shaping far more of your life than you want to admit. Circumstances do not shake you. Your untrained responses to circumstances do. Self-mastery begins the moment you stop treating your inner world as something automatic and begin treating it as something governed. Every thought that appears is not a command. Every emotion that rises is not an instruction. Every impulse that feels urgent is not necessarily true. Yet most people live as though whatever enters the mind deserves immediate obedience. That is not freedom. That is inner disorder disguised as spontaneity. Look closely at how often your reactions arrive before your judgment. Someone speaks, and irritation appears before understanding. A delay occurs, and frustration forms before perspective. A challenge arises, and fear speaks before reason has a chance. If you live in this sequence without interruption, you are not choosing your life. You are reacting to it after it has already been shaped by impulse. Self-mastery is the return of authority to reason. It is the practice of placing judgment between stimulus and response. That small space is where your entire character is decided, not in the event itself, not in the emotion itself, but in whether you pause long enough to ask whether your reaction deserves to become your action. Begin each morning by refusing to be mentally unprepared. Do not step into the day as though your mind is neutral and untouched. It is not neutral. It already carries habits of reaction, assumptions, preferences, and fears. If you do not prepare it deliberately, it will default to its old patterns. So before the world begins pulling at your attention, set one clear intention. You will not let impressions govern you without examination. Remind yourself that you will encounter people who behave poorly, events that unfold unfairly, and situations that refuse to align with your plans. None of these things are surprising. What must remain surprising is your own loss of self-control in response to them. Your task is not to prevent disturbance from appearing in the world. Your task is to prevent disturbance from ruling your mind. Throughout the day, practice the discipline of examination before acceptance. When a thought appears, do not immediately believe it. When an emotion arises, do not immediately act on it. When an opinion forms, do not immediately treat it as truth. Instead, pause and ask whether it belongs to reason or reaction. Most inner turmoil survives only because it is never questioned. You will notice how quickly judgments form about other people. You assume intention where you have only observed behavior. You assign meaning where you have only partial information. You construct stories about disrespect, neglect, or failure without verifying facts. This habit creates unnecessary emotional weight. Self-mastery begins by refusing to finalize judgments too quickly. Another essential discipline is separating what belongs to you from what does not. Your actions, your choices, your judgments, your willingness to act with justice or abandon it, these are yours. Everything else is external. Reputation, praise, criticism, outcomes, delays, and the behavior of others do not belong to your control. When you confuse these categories, you lose stability. When you separate them clearly, you recover it. Much of your emotional instability comes from treating external events as personal evaluations. A rejection feels like a statement about your worth. A delay feels like an attack on your importance. A disagreement feels like a threat to your identity. But none of these events are designed to define you. They are simply events. The meaning you assign to them is where suffering begins. Train yourself to respond rather than react. Reaction is immediate and emotional. Response is deliberate and guided by reason. Reaction asks, "How do I feel about this?" Response asks, "What is the right thing to do now?" That shift determines whether you are ruled by impulse or governed by self-mastery. When frustration appears, do not rush to suppress it. Observe it, name it internally, recognize it as a movement within the mind, not a command over the mind. The moment you observe emotion instead of merging with it, you regain a degree of freedom. You are no longer inside the reaction. You are watching it. You will also need to confront your dependence on comfort. A mind that seeks only ease becomes fragile in the face of difficulty. Self-mastery requires voluntary encounters with discomfort, so that discomfort loses its power over you. This does not mean seeking harm. It means refusing to let inconvenience dictate your behavior. Do what is necessary even when it feels unpleasant. In doing so, you strengthen inner stability. Pay attention to your internal language. The undisciplined mind speaks in absolutes. This is unbearable. I cannot handle this. This always happens to me. These statements are not observations. They are emotional exaggerations that weaken resilience. Replace them with accurate language. This is difficult. This is unwanted. This requires effort. Precision restores strength. Another practice of self-mastery is refusing to outsource your emotional state to other people. If your peace depends on how others behave, you are not free. People will misunderstand you, disagree with you, ignore you, and sometimes treat you unfairly. If each of these events determines your inner condition, you will never remain steady. Your stability must come from your own judgment, not from external approval. Examine how often you seek validation before action. You wait for reassurance before speaking honestly. You wait for certainty before making decisions. You wait for approval before committing to what you already know is right. This dependence weakens self-trust. Self-mastery requires acting according to reason even when reassurance is absent. As the day continues, practice returning to yourself repeatedly. Your attention will be pulled outward constantly. Conversations, notifications, responsibilities, and distractions will scatter your awareness. The disciplined mind returns again and again to its center. It remembers its task, to govern itself, not to be absorbed by everything around it. There will be moments when emotional intensity feels overwhelming. In those moments, do not attempt to solve everything immediately. First, restore clarity. Slow your judgment. Reduce interpretation. Return to facts. Ask what is actually happening without adding narrative. Clarity is more important than immediate resolution. A confused response creates more disorder than temporary stillness. You will also discover that self-mastery requires honesty without harshness. Self-deception is comfortable but destructive, yet self-criticism without guidance is equally unhelpful. Observe your faults without exaggeration and without excuse. The goal is correction, not condemnation. A clear view of your own weaknesses is not weakness itself. It is the beginning of strength. In relationships, self-mastery appears as restraint. You do not speak every thought that arises. You do not react to every irritation. You do not demand immediate emotional satisfaction from others. Instead, you choose words that align with justice and timing. You allow space between feeling and expression. That space protects both your integrity and your relationships. When success arrives, self-mastery prevents arrogance. When failure arrives, it prevents collapse. When uncertainty arrives, it prevents panic. Stability does not come from controlling events. It comes from controlling your interpretation of events. The disciplined mind remains consistent regardless of external fluctuation because it is anchored in principle rather than circumstance. At the end of the day, examine your conduct without distortion. Where did impulse override reason? Where did you react before you reflected? Where did emotion take authority that should have belonged to judgment? Do not avoid these questions. Avoidance preserves weakness. Honest review transforms it. Also identify where you succeeded in governing yourself. Where did you pause instead of reacting? Where did you choose reason over comfort? Where did you remain steady despite emotional pressure? These moments matter just as much as failures because they reveal that mastery is already possible. Do not expect perfection. Expect practice. Self-mastery is not a final state you arrive at. It is a continuous discipline of returning authority to reason each time it is lost. Every moment gives you another opportunity to practice that return. Over time, something subtle begins to change. External events still occur, emotions still arise, thoughts still appear, but they no longer determine your direction. They become material for observation rather than commands for action. You stop being pushed around by inner noise and begin standing at the center of it with clarity. This is what it means to become unshakable. Not that nothing affects you, but that nothing governs you except your own disciplined judgment. When you reach that point, life does not become simpler, but it becomes steadier. And steadiness is the foundation of true strength. From this moment forward, your task is clear. Observe before you obey. Pause before you react. Separate what is yours from what is not. Choose reason over impulse. Practice this repeatedly, not in perfection, but in persistence. In that repetition, self-mastery ceases to be an idea and becomes the quiet structure of your life.